Last week on FluteTube, we talked about the history of your G-sharp key and whether you have a closed or open G-sharp key. There are players in Russia, some of Eastern Europe, some great players in England who play with an open G-sharp key, but nearly all of us play with a closed G-sharp key. And at the end of last week's episode, I asked you to think hard about what we might learn from this switch from open G-sharp key to closed G-sharp key. I wanted to know if you could guess what I think we should learn from this history, how we can apply it. And if you came up with the same answer I did today, let me know. Put it in the comments, because I don't think the answer is at all obvious. I think that was an extremely difficult question for me to ask. I suppose that due to the title of this video, though, the cat's already out of the bag. You know what I'm thinking about, because I already have in the title flute balance and finger stability, and that is what's changed based on whether you have an open or closed G-sharp key. But before you watch today's episode, I would suggest you watch two other episodes if you have not already. One is last week's, so that you'll know what we're talking about with open G-sharp versus closed G-sharp. And the other is an episode I did nearly exactly a year ago that's called Flute Balance, How to Hold Your Flute. Because we're going to talk about what you do with fingers and how that affects your flute balance. But that's advanced flute balance. There's a much more basic way to look at how you're balancing your flute just with your two hands and your chin and how you're holding your flute up. You want to have that down first. You want to have all the basics of holding your flute really solid and secure before you worry too much about helping the balance with your fingers. The basic idea is that whether we're thinking about it or not, when we play the flute, what we do with our fingers affects our stability. If we're slapping our fingers around a lot while we play, it can jiggle our flutes and we lose a lot of stability. We can make our finger technique a lot more smooth. It can feel and sound better and gain a lot of stability for us as we play. If you want proof that stability truly is very good for your playing, try this little exercise. Hold your flute firmly with your right hand while you put your head joint against your mouth and play a G major scale up and down. All you have to modify, since you don't have your right hand, is that when you get to the high E, you finger an A and you overblow it. When you get to the high F sharp, you finger a B and overblow it. Otherwise, you can do the whole scale just fine. If you do this a few times and overcome just the strangeness of how it feels, you'll realize that it feels very safe and secure to be holding your flute against your chin like this while you play. And that's where you see that stability is really very helpful. There are two big ways that having an open G-sharp key can actually improve your finger stability. And because nearly all of us, or all of us who are watching this video, will be playing a closed G-sharp key flute, we should think about what we gave up in terms of finger stability and see if we can recapture it somehow. The first big way that having an open G-sharp key can improve your finger stability is that, if you remember, we talked about you play A, then if you have an open G-sharp, this is G-sharp, and when you press down your lever here, it closes the key and it gives you G natural. So then what happens as you keep going down? F sharp, F, E, D sharp, D, down to your C sharp, C, B. You have to keep this pinky down because it closes your G key rather than opening our G sharp key. So that means that while you're playing all of these notes, your left hand fourth finger is pressed down, and that makes things more stable. Just think about it. Our right hand fourth helps improve our stability by pressing down this key most of the time. So if you have both pinkies that you can press down to improve stability, it does make those low notes, and also the notes in the middle register that you have this pushed down as well, a little bit more stable. I have have a very favorite place to do this. It's in the middle of the Martin Ballade for flute, one of my all-time favorite flute pieces. It's right after this incredibly high energy cadenza, and if you're performing, your energy is going to be up. You might be a little more shaky and a little less stable. You get to the low register, and this pinky is just kind of hovering for a long time. But if you think about, well, how could I put my pinky down for greater stability? Press our pinky down against the tube of the flute sometimes. You put it there, you just place it there while you're playing in the low register, and it makes everything feel a little bit more stable and reliable. You can also think about the lesson we learned, that the reason Böhm wanted to have an open G-sharp key instead of the closed G-sharp key like we have, is that the more big open tone holes you have while you play, the more resonant your flute is. That's especially true for the more big open tone holes that you have right beneath the last closed key that you have on the flute tube. So if you're playing, say, a C or a B or an A, especially if it's a long sustained note, especially if it's a taper, that can feel very unstable. But if you add this pinky, just for stability, just allow this G-sharp key to open up, give a little more venting. It's not going to hurt your sound. If anything, it will help it to be a little more resonant. You can just put that down while you hold a tapering C or B or A, and you will feel more stable in your hands. It's also a lot easier to deal with intonation. If you're afraid that you're going to go flat, you can just gently use your left hand forefinger and your right hand forefinger to make sure that your flute is at the best angle and that you're not going to change pitch as you hold and diminuendo. The second way that having an open G-sharp key can improve finger stability, which we have chosen to lose by choosing a closed G-sharp key, is that when you have an open G-sharp key, you reliably push down another key in order to go down pitchwise. C, B, A, G sharp, G. But because we've chosen to have a closed G-sharp key, our fourth finger moves in opposite motion from all the other fingers on our left hand. We push to close all these keys, whereas our poor little fourth finger pushes a lever down to open a key. So this causes our fingers a little bit of trouble being precisely coordinated. You're closing keys by opposite motion. You're pushing your right hand finger down, you're lifting your left hand finger up, and these two keys have to close at exactly the same time. That makes us much more likely to have little glitches in our technique. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to solve that with our closed G-sharp key that we use. All we can do is be aware of it. If we're not aware of it, we have much less hope of ever fixing our technique. But if you're aware that that's going to be more difficult, you can just monitor it more closely, make sure that everything is precisely coordinated so that your technique is very smooth and clear. If you feel at all foggy about what I just mentioned with opposite motion fingers and the three little devils, go back and watch my episode number 2, Michel Dubose and the Three Little Devils. He explains how you have these fingers that move in contrary motion, pushing a lever to open a key, and this is your third little devil for other reasons I explain in that video. Can you see how pressing a lever to close a key with this finger rather than pressing a lever down to open a key kind of gets rid of one of these little devils? Even Michel Dubose acknowledged this in his writing. He said that the open G-sharp key makes more sense than the closed G-sharp key because it allows all your fingers to move in the same direction as you go down the tube. The This discussion we've had about your left hand fourth finger and how you can sometimes add it either on the flute tube itself or on your G-sharp lever to increase stability should make you think about other ways that you could add fingers here and there to increase your stability. You should never feel guilty about adding fingers as long as it does not change pitch, unless it may tiny bit improve pitch, and as long as you're closing keys that are far away from the last closed key. So for instance, if you're playing a C and you feel more stable adding your right hand 3 finger, that's far away from the C key. That's okay to have a finger that's closing a hole way down there, but you don't want to close anything that's too far up the tube, too close to that closed C key. One place that people often add fingers to increase stability is going between D to C sharp. Many players will leave their right hand 2 and 3 fingers down on the C sharp in order to improve the stability. If anything, it also may slightly improve pitch since that C sharp tends to be high. I fairly often add a finger or two just to make my technique a little more stable. I was thinking about it during quintet rehearsal today. It happened to be on my mind because I was getting ready to record this video. And so I just noticed in passing there was a passage going between D and B quite often. And what I did there to increase stability is that instead of moving my right hand this way, I kept my right hand fourth finger up, but I left my right hand third finger down. So I did this just to increase the stability. It's much more stable than doing this. Similarly, there was a passage that had a lot of 16th notes alternating between D's and C's. And just as an observer, I noticed again, I did not fool around putting down my right hand fourth finger on and off of this lever, but I left my right hand 2 and 3 fingers down. Keep on the lookout for more advanced places where you can do quite a lot to improve your finger stability. One of the best examples I can think of is in Altez Etude number 13, which I recorded last December 30th, 2020. There's a whole passage in there where Altez tells you to leave your right hand 2 finger down for every single note that you play. So you're playing this entire passage and all of your fingers are moving around except that right hand 2 just stays down, and it makes everything much more stable if you do that. There are places like that where you can find a little trick that will drastically improve your whole flute stability as most of your fingers are just flying.